We can.
Aloha all. Right, Cloud Foundry Foundation Technical Oversight Committee for the 22nd of November 2022. I have no idea how it got to November already. That's not fair. On the agenda today, some actions from last week, some actions from a couple of weeks before that. We're going to hear from the Service Management Working Group. We got some PRs and then any other business. Actions from last week. Stephan, you have proposed an alternative in the RFC thread.
Yeah.
Is any other news on that?
I added one sentence to the RFC. We are talking about the RFC of the branch protection, right? To have this bailout a possibility to temporarily, for instance, adapt the number of approvers. And I wrote a sentence about that. We can look at it when we go over the PRs, I would say.
Okay. Eric corrected a bunch of language in the RFC document. Thank you for doing that, Eric. It was on me had I forgot. So I was glad to see when I went to do it today that you'd already done it. Beyhan updated a bunch of stuff in the README. Anything else to add on that?
Should be ready for review. There's also a PR which needs some approvals.
Perfect. Okay, from a couple of weeks back, we wanted to have a look at GitHub Actions usage across the org. Chris, you were going off to talk about VMware, about GitHub costs. Did you get anywhere?
Well, I chatted with GitHub about GitHub costs. And,
why did I think VMware was involved?
But well, VMware is important too, in that we, VMware is important in purging users from the GitHub org before we could think about migrating to an upgraded plan. But I did talk to GitHub, and I think if we do a nice user purge in the Cloud Foundry org and get that down from the 700 and something current users in that, and that includes outside collaborators, if we can get that down to like 300, then we should be able to do that if that's what the TOC decides. Essentially, you'd get a significant bump in GitHub Actions minutes, and you would have access to the maintainer role. The other thing they said is that they're also, at some point, they were planning on doing this, maybe around now, but then the pandemic hit, so they postponed it, they said. But at some point in the next 2 to 5 years, they said, they will sunset the legacy plan that Cloud Foundry is on right now. And so at that point, we'd have to either move to the free plan, which has fewer things, will be a downgrade, or move up to the Teams plan anyway. So I think it seems inevitable that we would move up to the Teams plan when that happens. So, we have the budget. I'm certainly open to it if that's the solution here. On the other hand, if the TOC decides that hosting our own runners makes more sense, then we could explore that as well. So that's where we're at. And I think, if I can sit down with some of the VMware folks, Eric, and maybe some others, and maybe sometime in December, and try and get that purge of users done, then we can get that down to reasonable costs where it would be about, hopefully $10,000 to $15,000 a year to give us those extra GitHub Actions and get access to the maintainer roles.
Yeah, I think that's a good review to do, and this seems like maybe this warrants some community policy about stale members of the GitHub org, who I think are that contributor role. So I don't think that we have any formal language about revoking that role from people once they've acquired it. So we probably need some RFC document proposing a policy there.
Yeah.
So, if there's been like no activity or no contributions for 6 months or a year or something like that, then you're at least flagged for removal from the GitHub org.
Yep. I assume right now for this initial purge, that language wouldn't be necessary, just because there's so many people that aren't listed as contributors, or just people from 5 years ago, 8 years ago are probably still in the org.
Well, I mean, I think there's also a good opportunity to just set the policy, and then we stick to it. Mm-hmm. We decide what it is. That might be informed by the activity levels that we can detect from the set of users that are there.
Right. So, after 6 months of inactivity, a contributor or something may be removed with some exemptions for administrators or other folks that, you know, might not be active regularly, but need access. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, sounds for me also a good way forward, especially as this maintainer role could solve other problems as well. So, yeah. And if we are on the road anyway, then yeah, doing it a bit earlier than under pressure is always a good idea.
And once that purge is done, it would be as simple as me going and just clicking a box and, you know, putting in a credit card information. And then we're on Teams, and then we have access to all these things. I will mention this to the governing board, that this is something we might do. I can't imagine there'll be any objections, but I'll mention this to the governing board at the meeting we have next week. But so essentially, I think it'll be up to the TOC if this is something we want to do. I think we can do it. You know, even if it was just for the maintainer role, if we think that it's worth the $1,000 a month or something for that, you know, we can spend that. But I don't know if there's more. We want to have more of a conversation about hosting our own runners. I know in the main thread about this in the TOC channel, someone had mentioned that the GitHub runners were weaker than they might want. So hosting our own runners could have some advantages over the existing ones. But I'm not sure about that.
Maybe the other action related to this was, I said I will go and have a look at the actual numbers of runs that we've been seeing. So I pulled from the beginning of this year to the end of October, which is the last sort of complete month that we had. And the takeaway from all that is average number of runs per month is trending downwards, not upwards, across the board. It's just some working groups are seeing it go up. Build packs use it the most, but the vast majority of repos don't use it at all. I think perhaps it would be good for somebody with a bit more of an intimate knowledge of those repos, who works a bit closer to it than I do, to maybe have a look at that spreadsheet and make sure that I'm not including anything that's completely irrelevant, or I'm not skewing it in some way that doesn't make sense. Because otherwise, maybe we're actually heading towards a point where the amount of minutes we get already is okay. If we're actually trending downwards, and eventually that team won't have that experience because everybody else will be using it less, and they'll have more space to take up, if you see what I mean.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I am aware that there was like the cryogenics team. They did a bit of experimentation, which apparently used quite a lot of GitHub action minutes. So that could have like caused the issues that we have seen. One other thing is that there's the looks good to me integration. Like that's like some sort of code, static code analysis thing. They are moving from a hosted model to a GitHub Actions based model. So they're creating PRs all over the organization to start creating GitHub Actions workflows to do their, so that will, if people start merging those, that will increase our consumption.
It's good to know. So we think it's going to tick upwards then from where we are. Interesting.
Yeah.
And there's also the nuance that, like, the public repos, they have free actions, right? It's just the private repos that actually consume actions, but we have concurrency limits or something on even the free usage from the public ones. I thought I saw that discussion happening on Slack.
Oh yeah, no idea actually. Where I am, we work exclusively in public open repos, so yeah, never had that problem.
So it's not so much the minutes that we're running into, it's more the concurrency limits.
Yeah, I think I remember a comment about like maybe there's like 20 concurrent runs within some time window that are allowed, and bumping it up to the team's plan would give us 60. So it would triple that limit as well. Again, that's just hearsay on Slack.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It sounds like the clear path is to go, or I think that we should probably do anyway, is a user purge regardless of everything else.
I mean, that's good housekeeping, independent of this. So, yeah, Eric, maybe we can just find some time in December, early December, to set that up. And I'm not sure if Michelle or David want to be involved as well, but we can just run a report about inactive users that haven't been on for a while as context, and then just, I assume we have to manually go through and just look at the 700 people and
probably
yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to create an RFC where we outline the policy and then we create automation to apply that policy, like we did with the other things?
Yes, although I think for this first purge, maybe there's just so many people that are, haven't been active in 5-6 years. I think we could just go through and delete them, right? But then every 6 months or 12 months or whatever cadence you'll decide, there should be some kind of automated run that looks for stale users. Yes. And so an RFC, I think, is important for that.
Yeah, because we have to decide on the cutoff.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, Chris, I think what you're saying is there's probably some folks that are obvious, like, they were last aware of some activity in, like 2014 or something. And so.
Or even people that left a certain company, 3 months ago, right? Like there's 700, and I'm sure like half of them are probably obvious that they could be deleted. But then yes, there should be policies for how this is done on a regular basis to keep things tidy and cost effective.
Yeah, so I mean, let's have some discussion about the policy. I mean, is there any particular urgency to this? We don't need to decide like January 1st about switching to the plan. We can do it anytime.
Nope, we can do it anytime. It's just if there are continued issues with GitHub Actions, we can solve for that. And whatever advantage we get out of having those maintainer roles sooner rather than later, there's that. So, I don't see any urgency here, but if the dev community says they're running into problems continuously, then, so yeah, I mean, there's no real urgency, and it could wait till next year. I'll just have some bandwidth come mid-December, so it's a good time for me, but
okay. Yeah. Well, I think regardless, let's get the RFC drafting,
sure.
So that we can start proposing this policy within the community. And, if there's some obvious things to do in the meantime, then we can do those in parallel.
Sounds good.
My battery is running low, but I opened 2 issues. Maybe we can go over those first, because one of them is for that I would want Chris's input. So there was one thing I found that we there's LFX dashboards for security and stuff like that, and insights. In there we have different projects, but those projects don't match the working groups.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a control project or something where we could set those things up. It would be nice if those things would match.
This is something I've been working on for a while and been running into just some issues. Like the LF legal department has to do some things to get that to match correctly, and I've been requesting this for some time, and I'm hoping to have it done this year. So, and at that point, we'll onboard to the Insights as a new V2 out, and I'd like to onboard to that. But I was waiting to get these to have a kind of a one-to-one correlation with the new working groups as sub-projects of Cloud Foundry. That way, every working group has their own individual dashboard that they can look at. This is something that's been on my to-do list for a while, and I've just been running into some bottlenecks to the LF getting that done. So definitely on that, and I hope to get that done soon.
Good. The other one was an issue. Someone had a question about what was it? The homebrew formula that we have to install the CF CLI. they just wanted a pull request merge, and I found that it was actually not owned by any working group. So then I created a script to look at if there's any or more of these like orphaned repositories that are not archived, and I found a bunch. So we apparently have another list to go through of things that should end up in a working group or be archived.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to take a look at those. Some of those are probably CFF or admin repositories. And I think we were going to carve out a niche for that. I don't know if that's really happened yet formally. So.
Yeah, I think that's stated in the repository ownership RFC, that there's that category.
Okay.
But should we then create, like, how are permissions handled then right now for those repositories? The ones that fall in the admin category, because we have the automation that has deleted a bunch of teams. So I don't know if these things are still, if people still have access to them. Maybe it's easier to just create a working group or something for the admin category so that we can use the same automation to set up the permissions.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think a lot of those don't have team access. They just have, me and, a Linux Foundation bot and maybe someone else in the LF with access to it as of right now. But we could streamline that and make it more in line with the rest of the automation and working groups.
If I remember correctly, then the TOC is treated as an own working group, and but with some special rights. I would need to read it up again. So the TOC, of course, and the admins are have the necessary rights here. But having an extra working group is no harm, of course.
Yeah, kind of a virtual working group.
Yeah, we just make it easier to weed out the orphan repositories that are left over, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it from my side.
Okay. Thanks for that, Ruben. Right, yeah, let's move on to hearing from the service management working group. Marcela, floor's yours.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? So quick update on the service management working group. On the service fabric side, there was an interoperator release, and there was a presentation of interoperator in the last CAP meeting, in the meeting last month. Which was nice. You can watch the recording if you're interested. Then cloud service brokers. We are missing one approver that's going on leave. Have to make that PR. We are improving testing in the aim to on the provide better quality to the project, but also see if we can get more a framework to get more contributions more easily and make it more accessible for people. But at the moment, you can submit a PR, but it's a lot of work from our side because we have to do that most of the testing. And there's no easy way to let people do that bit themselves. So we are progressing through that, and we have added some tutorials on how to contribute. And we have in the backlog the work to move to a PR-only workflow for bots, like the bots approval process that would be necessary if we have the branch protection rules enforced later on. Please let us know well in advance when that's going to be enforced, because it's going to cause us a lot of pain if we haven't done this work. On the OSB API, that side is a bit deserted at the moment. We do have one approver, but he is not active at the moment. So we can reach out to him if there's something important that we need, but definitely there's not much activity, and people are not dedicating time to contribute to this project for different reasons. Some of them don't see activity, so they don't adopt it. Some of them actually want to move it forward, but priorities in their companies have changed, or they have left the company or whatever, and that changes things. We have made a release since the last update with changes that have been done forever. Between them, the specification for the binding rotations that Stephan was so keen to have. So yeah, there were changes there that were needed by SAP as well. So we released, but it's all work that had been done in the past couple of years, actually, and the release was pending. Yeah, there are no real needs at the moment surfaced either by the platforms or by broker authors, so it's in standby. In volume services, apart from dependency bumps, there's nothing going on there as well.
What was that last section there? Sorry.
Volume services. Those projects are mostly just dependency bumps or changes like compatibility with Jammy and that kind of things that we have needed in the last few months. But there are no new features or issues at the moment. I checked with them about the branch protection rules, and it should be okay. But nothing outstanding on that side also. So that's mostly what's been going on. Any questions?
Maybe one question. Are you aware about discussions with the CAPI team on this new Open Service Broker API release? Or
yes, I mean, and they are not going to do any changes at the moment.
Okay.
They're not going to. CAPI is still not even compliant with 2.16, leave alone 2.17. Yeah.
Okay, then. Yeah,
but if you want it, you can start bugging. Make a business case for that to happen. And
there's so much stuff to do in CAPI. We will see.
Yeah, I think the CAPI team is not focused on any services related improvements at the moment.
Well, there has been quite some activity regarding the handling of asynchronous services. There were bugs in CAPI, how to deal with, let's say, failed states when it comes to service instance creation or service binding creation, and so some activity is there. I think currently there is a PR open for dealing with asynchronous service bindings when pushing an app with a manifest, because that's simply not supported at the moment. But yeah, it's still digesting stuff from the past.
Yeah.
Have you been in a conversation with the Karifi teams about service management at all?
No, not at all.
Are there other communities using the OSP APIs? So, like in the past, there was some mentioning from Kubernetes.
There used to be service catalog that was in that area, but it has been archived in the K8 community. So there's still people asking about it, and a lot of people think it's a good idea, but I think the other patterns have win the battle for now in K8.
Mm-hmm.
Any more?
Marcela, I recall a few months ago there was discussion about like Travis CI usage. That might have been for Service Fabric. I don't recall. Has that that been resolved now?
No. So we work with Chris Clark. He was in touch with Travis and trying to find alternatives, but there was no option. So what they are doing currently is just they have to send an email every month asking for more credits, and they get them. They just need to remember to get those credits in advance. The recommendation at that moment was to move to GitHub Actions, which I'm not sure if it's as good as a recommendation at the moment, being the problems we've been discussing in the last couple of meetings. Anyway, it's not in there. It is in their radar to move over, but it's not prioritized yet.
Sorry about that, folks. Can't type fast enough. Okay, last call. Any more?
Is there anything else we can help you with, Marcela?
Not at the moment. I think mostly, yes, letting us know in advance any enforcement that you may do about the branch protection rules, so we make sure that we can continue operating normally.
Yeah, we will definitely announce it before it's rolled out, and looks like it will take a little bit longer because of some missing features in the branch protector tool that we wanted to use.
Yeah, and I assume also like doing something like this in December is not the best of ideas, right? Because a lot of people is going on and off on holidays.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much, Marcela. Let's move on to some PRs. We have 449 up first. That is the RFC for branch protection rules, funnily enough. Do we want to, at this point, so I merged everyone's changes in earlier, well, added them to the branch, and then I'll squish all this down and make it something less bitty before we actually merge it. Do we want to just reopen a final comment period again? Okay.
That's good to me.
2 thumbs, Beyhan? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it ends what? It's the 29th next week. Okay. Done and done. Can move on from that for now. 477 is up next. So this is the PR that Beyhan raised for the README changes. I'm guessing it just wants thumbs up and then merging. Yeah. Okay. GitHub's being slow, right when you want it not to be. There's a majority and merge. Okay, finally 481. I say finally. The last one I pulled. If anybody has any others, go find them. So this is the script that Ruben added just to find orphaned repos.
Yeah, I guess replacing spruce by YQ.
Yeah, what's the spruce thing? You know?
Yeah, I had to search for it until I understood where the tool comes from.
You should really use Spiff instead. I mean, come on. No.
Yeah.
So let's leave this open for the time being. Just give Ruben a chance to do that. I'm also not. Are we happy with just scripts in the repo, or do we also require like an obvious way to run them? Is like, do we have concourse jobs associated with them, or are they just utility things for when we need them?
I think that we could check in with Ruben, but I thought this was just to help a utility that would give us a list.
That was more my question about is what is our feeling about these sorts of things rather than should there actually be. But no, okay, yeah, I'm happy with just a script there. So cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a fair question. Like, if this is going to be here, should something run it periodically and say like, hey, we've got some unowned repos that aren't archived.
Yeah, let's get it merged first, and then we can work out afterwards. So that was last of the PRs that I flagged looking through earlier. Are there any other ones that anybody wants to raise? Nope. Room seems to say no. Okay. Any other business then? Seems not. So I'll move the outcomes from discussion at the beginning to the actions. So Eric and Chris to go away and coordinate maybe in December to look at a user purge, and then later down the line, we as a TOC will start to draft a stale user removal policy or something to that effect. Those words don't sound quite right, but you get the picture. We could probably safely wait until the new year for that, to be honest. I don't think there's any urgency on it. Alrighty. Before we close out, any final things that anybody wants to look at? No? Cool. All right. Well, enjoy the World Cup, everyone.
Wow.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.